In its November 2024 issue, The Atlantic magazine, for the fifth time in its 167-year history, is endorsing a candidate for president, Kamala Harris. The Atlantic magazine was founded in 1857 on the eve of the Great Civil War, featuring leading writers, beginning with Ralph Waldo Emerson, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Longfellow, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Mark Twain, and many other leading thinkers and writers in the following century and a half. In keeping with this declaration in its original cover, the magazine is devoted to literature, art, and politics. The Atlantic editors proclaim, because one of the most personally malignant and politically dangerous candidates in American history was on the ballot, the Atlantic endorsed Trump's previous Democratic opponents, only the third and fourth endorsements since the magazine's founding in 1857. We endorsed Abraham Lincoln for president in 1860, though not for reasons lost to history, in 1864. Early in 1864, Lincoln was doubtful whether he would win re-election, even after the summer 1863 victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg. But after Sherman's invasion of Atlanta and his march to the sea, both Union victory and Lincoln's re-election seemed certain. 104 years later, we endorsed Lyndon B Johnson for president. The editors of this magazine in 1964 feared Barry Goldwater less for his positions than for his zealotry and seeming lack of self-restraint. Unlike Lincoln and the radical Republicans, Lyndon Johnson was at a unique junction where political logjams were freed by the rushing waters of history. He had the opportunity to drastically improve the lot of millions of ordinary Americans through the civil rights and Great Society programs. The Atlantic editors explain, in 2016, we endorsed Hillary Clinton for more or less the same reason Johnson won this magazine's endorsement in 1964. Clinton was a credible candidate who would have made a competent president, but we endorsed her because she was running against a manifestly unstable and incompetent Republican nominee. For the third time in 8 years, Americans have had to decide whether they want Donald Trump to be their president. No voter could be ignorant by now of who he is. Opinions about Trump aren't just hardened, they're dried out and exhausted. The man's character has been in our faces for so long, blatant and unchanging, that it kills the possibilities of new thoughts, which explains a strange mix of boredom and dread in our politics. Whenever Trump senses any waning of public attention, he'll call his opponents a disgusting name, or dishonor the memory of fallen soldiers, or threaten to overturn the election if he loses, or vow to rule like a dictator if he wins. He knows that nothing he says is likely to change anyone's views. And we want to push back on that assertion. Trump does want you to change your views. He wants to bring out the worst in you. He lusts for you to fall victim to your deepest fears for his political benefit, so he does not have to spend the rest of his life in jail, but rather golfing on the links of Mar-a-Lago. Many thought that his assertion at the Black Journalists Conference that Kamala had only recently turned black was not calculated, but I think it was. Unfortunately, Kamala could pass for white, and he wanted to vividly remind his white MAGA voter base that she is as irredeemably black as a blackbird pot. We and the folks of the Bulwark, who produced an insanely funny but true video of a mock game show, would like to add, whenever Trump senses any waning of public attention, he will blame the immigrants. And Trump was blaming immigrants for all the ills that America suffers in both the Biden and Harris debates. Can Trump successfully blame all problems on migrants? I and the Bulwark want to know. How are migrants responsible for? How difficult it is to find a job, since all the jobs are going to migrants. The cost of housing, since migrants are being booked into all the good hotels. The precarious financial condition of Medicare and Social Security. Black unemployment, since migrants are taking all the black jobs. Problems in schools, since migrant children are occupying all the desks. Problems in hospitals, they're being filled up by migrants, and the homelessness of veterans, and the suffering caused by Hurricane Helene, and the story that FEMA has almost no money because they spend it all on illegal migrants. Republicans losing election, those migrants voted against them. The bribery indictment of New York Mayor Eric Adams, and the decline of Little League Baseball, and, don't forget, the missing pets. We know that Kamala Harris won the debate, but did Trump lose the debate? We won't really know until voting day in November. Trump said exactly what he wanted to say, he shouted what he wanted us to hear, and he repeated what got him elected in 2016. Compare what he said when he announced his candidacy when going down the escalator in Trump Tower in 2015 to his infamous quote in the presidential debate. In 2015, Trump said, "When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. And they're bringing those problems with them. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people." Compare that to Trump 2024. In Springfield, the Haitians are eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And that is what's happening in our country. And it is a shame. And the Atlantic magazine confirms this in another recent column on how the Trump campaign wants everyone talking about race. The former president and his advisor's strategy is to make white voters afraid, and they don't care if they have to lie to do it. And we also commented on this in our reflection on the Biden-Trump debate, when Trump's many outrageous racist comments were ignored. The Atlantic editors continue. Almost half of the electorate supported Trump in 2016 and supported him again in 2020. This same split seems likely on November 5th. Trump's support is fixed and impervious to argument. This election, like the last two, will be decided by an absurdly small percentage of voters in a handful of states. Of Trump's insults, cruelties, abuses of power, corrupt dealings, and crimes, the event that proved the essential rightness of our endorsements of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden took place on January 6, 2021, when Trump became the first American president to try and overturn an election and prevent the peaceful transfer of power. The Atlantic editors remind us, Kamala Harris doesn't curry favor with dictators. She won't abuse the power of the highest office in order to keep it. She believes in democracy. This year, Trump is even more vicious and erratic than in the past. The ideas of his closest advisors are more extreme. Trump has made clear that he would use a second term to consolidate an unprecedented power in his own hands, punishing adversaries and pursuing a far right-wing nut agenda that most Americans don't want. We believe that this election is a turning point in our history. The Atlantic magazine prophesied correctly when it endorsed Abraham Lincoln in 1860. And the current editors also emphasize this year's election is another. The Atlantic editors emphasize, having devoted her life to public service, Kamala Harris respects the law and the Constitution. She believes in the freedom, equality, and dignity of all Americans. She's untainted by corruption, let alone a felony record or a history of sexual assault. She doesn't embarrass her compatriots with her language or behavior, or pit them one against the other. She doesn't curry favor with dictators. She won't abuse the power of the highest office in order to keep it. She believes in democracy. These, and not any specific policy positions, are the reason the Atlantic is endorsing her. And to summarize the remainder of the reasons why the Atlantic editors endorsed Kamala Harris. Why should we vote for Kamala Harris? You may not agree with the Democratic Party solution. You may not like their immigration policies. You may not like windmills or electric cars. But Kamala Harris is not Trump. Kamala Harris will halt our never-ending political nightmare. Kamala Harris will not pit neighbor against neighbor, worker against worker, acquaintance against acquaintance. Maybe if Kamala wins, the Civil War will finally be over. Maybe if Kamala wins, we can look forward to family Thanksgiving dinners once again. The past was not so long ago. If you care about our democracy, you must vote. Democracy must be guarded and cherished. Democracy is not inevitable. We are living through the last throes of the Civil War, the struggle for civil rights, and democracy must win. During our grandfathers' lifetimes and the generations preceding them, over 10,000 blacks were lynched without any shred of due process during the Jim Crow years. That ugly past can return. The Atlantic editors warn us. If you're one of the many Americans who can't stand politics and just want to opt out, remember that under democracy, inaction is also inaction, that no one ever has clean hands, and that, as our 1860 editorial said, nothing can absolve us from doing our best to look at all public questions as citizens, and therefore in some sort as administrators and rulers. In other words, voting is a right that makes you responsible. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.